Today's video is sponsored by Hiya. More on them coming up. We've been eating up just as much summer produce as we can, and as we head into back to school season, it's time to start kind of finding our routine again. In the summertime, we eat a lot of fruit, a lot of sandwiches, a lot of our meals we'll eat outside, or the kids will just grab things as they run outside, and so I'm starting to want to make more cozy meals that we gather around the table for. And so this week I'm really working on creating that routine and getting back in the kitchen and making those delicious meals that make us all want to sit around the table together. This week I'm starting out the day before, and I wanted to show you how I'm just really quickly prepping my all butter pie crust that I'm going to use for breakfast tomorrow. And I also have some bacon that I put in the oven. I'll do it at 375 for roughly about 15 minutes, and it makes bacon so perfectly cooked and crispy, and it's a lot easier to do it in the oven than over the stove, I find, because then you don't really have to babysit it. You can just put it in and get something else done like pie crust. So I made my normal batch of pie crust, which makes 2 crusts. So one will go in the fridge for tomorrow morning, and the other one I'm going to go ahead and put in the freezer. Once my bacon was all cooked and crispy, I'm just chopping that up and I'm going to put it in the fridge for tomorrow morning, so I already have a head start to our week. During this time of year, when my kids are starting back to homeschool and the seasons are about to change, I love to get into a good routine, and definitely a good routine in the kitchen. So I love having different recipes that I make all the time, but I'll switch up those ingredients depending on the season. And so one of those things is a quiche. I make quiches all year round, but I love to just have a new one to go to at any given time of year. And right now I'm loving this really cozy version that is like a loaded baked potato. So it's kind of all of the breakfasty fixings, but you put it in a quiche and it's full of protein, lots of eggs, and just super filling. So I have my pie crust that has been refrigerated and I'm just rolling that out. It's not very nice looking today, but it's going to get the job done. This is a kamut pie crust, so it's a little bit crumbly too, but you can definitely just use regular all-purpose flour and it will turn out a little bit prettier than mine does. I just dust my fork with a little bit of flour and then I do a really nice rustic edge. And when I'm making a quiche like this that's pretty thick and hearty, I like to blind bake it. So basically I'll take a piece of parchment paper and lay that over my raw pie crust, and then I will sprinkle in some of these beans that I've had for years just in a jar specifically for blind baking, and I'll spread those out. That way the bottom doesn't puff up, but it kind of helps the crust get a head start in cooking, so you don't end up with one of those quiches that has kind of the soggier bottom crust. It helps everything to just cook through really nicely. So once that's done, I'll just pull those out, and I reuse these year after year. They never go bad. They're just dry beans and we're not wetting them or anything, so they last a really long time. So I set that crust aside, and now I'm getting started on just my basic quiche filling, and that uses roughly 4 to 5 eggs, and then I like to do a cup of heavy cream, but sometimes I'll swap that out for half and half if that's what I have in the fridge, but the heavy cream just gives it the best texture, I find. And then I'm also adding in some scallions. I'll just thinly slice those, and a couple tablespoons of fresh chives. I just love the brightness that all the green scallions and chives add to this. I really love that flavor, especially with the sharp cheeses. And so I'm also going to be using about a cup of Monterey Jack cheese and a cup of sharp cheddar cheese, and you can use yellow or white cheddar. My kids love baked potatoes, so the idea behind this quiche is really just to make it taste like a baked potato. So to do that, I'm using the chives and the scallions and the cheeses, but then the star to this quiche is just using some frozen cubed hash browns. And I like to thaw them first, so you can do that overnight in the fridge, or you can do it in the microwave or oven just for a few minutes. And if there's any liquid in your bowl, just drain that out so that they're nice and dry. And we're gonna add in about 2 cups of those frozen and frozen thawed cubed hash browns. And it just makes this so hearty and goes so well with the eggs and with the cheese and of course that bacon. So I'm using about a 10-ounce package of bacon, and it's the one I cooked yesterday and just chopped up, so it was already ready to go and I could just throw it in this morning. Now I'm pulling my pie crust back over and I'm going to pour all of that delicious and hearty quiche filling into there. Just spread it out a little bit and get it nicely distributed. I also like to do a little sprinkle of chives on top just because it makes it look extra pretty. Then I'll put it into the oven at 350 degrees and let that bake for about 50 minutes to an hour until it's nice and set in the middle. You've heard me talk about my kids' multivitamin that we take from Hiya, but what they also now have is a kids' daily greens powder and superfood powder that you can add into things like chocolate peanut butter smoothies or put into milk or their favorite non-dairy milk. And we love it because it's packed with over 55 whole foods, but it's really easy to sneak into your kids' diet just by adding it into milk or a yummy smoothie. You can even put it in popsicles. It supports their brain power and development and also their digestion. So it's just a really easy way and a tasty way that you can add nutrients into your kids' diet that they'll actually enjoy eating. You'll get a refillable canister like this, and it's so fun. My kids love being able to customize it and put their stickers on it, and so it's so fun when you get your first shipment to be able to do that with your kids and get them excited about their vitamins. So if you want to try out the Hiya Daily Greens and Superfood Powder, you can use my link. Go to hiyahealth.com/healthy Elizabeth, and they're going to give you 50% off your first order. This deal is not available on their regular website, so head to hiyahealth.com/healthy Elizabeth, and they're going to give you 50% off your first order. Get your kids the full body nourishment they deserve to grow into healthy adults. Thanks so much to Hiya for sponsoring today's video. Once you start to smell all that cheese and bacon, I pull it out of the oven and let it cool for about 15 to 20 minutes so it can really set up and have the right consistency in the middle. And then I will serve it usually with a little bit of ketchup for the kids or hot sauce. And today I'm just doing a simple plum on the side, and this is such a hearty breakfast. Everything's in there that you need, and it just tastes so good. Yesterday, I ended up cooking up a bunch of salmon fillets, and I have some left over in the fridge, and so I want to try making a salmon salad, so kind of like a tuna salad or a chicken salad. I figured if I have leftover salmon, it's probably a really good way to use it up. And I know you could use canned salmon too, so if you have that or you can get that, definitely just do it. But since I have some cooked salmon, I think I'm going to try it out and see how it goes, and then just serve it on a little bit of sourdough bread. I shop at Sprouts a lot, and so I love to pick up new fun ingredients just to add into my cooking. And one of them that I found recently that we all love is this pickle de gallo. So it's like chopped up pickles with some peppers in it. It has just a tiny bit of heat. It says it's hot, but it's really not that spicy, but it's kind of just like a fresher relish. So I'm going to use that today in this super easy salmon salad. So if you get those big fillets of salmon at Costco or frozen at the grocery store, this is a great way to use it up. So if you have leftovers, you can just take a couple fillets and peel that skin off, and then just keep it cold straight from the fridge and just shred that up with a couple forks. Since salmon is so nice and flaky and tender, I like to make sure that there's plenty of crunch in salads like this. So I'm chopping up some celery, and I also have a sweet onion that I'm going to chop up too. And then we'll add that in with that pickle relish. And if you don't have that, you could just take regular dill pickles and chop those up nice and finely, or even throw in a little bit of a spicy pepper like a jalapeno. I'm adding 1 tablespoon of honey mustard. I love the taste of honey mustard versus Dijon, but if you have Dijon, it's same thing. You can add that in and it'll just give it a little bit of a mustardy kick, which I find goes so well with salmon. I'm going to season it to taste with some salt and some pepper, and then I'm also going to add in about 2 tablespoons or so of fresh dill, just because dill goes so well with salmon and it just kind of brightens everything up. Then just to bring this all together, I'm going to add in some scoops of mayo, just do that to your desired consistency. So if you like it a little bit drier or a little bit more smooth and creamy, you can kind of just gauge that. I just eyeball that part and do it to taste. I'll stir that all together, and I like to let this chill in the fridge for at least about an hour or so. That way all of that onion and relish, all of that flavor really comes through in the salmon. And so letting it sit in the fridge just brings out all of that. I'm getting some regular white sourdough bread and putting some lettuce on it and topping it with that salmon salad. And it was so fun just to have something different for lunch. I had never had salmon salad before until today, and it was really delicious, something different, and a great way to repurpose all those leftovers. This afternoon, we had a much needed rainstorm, which was so great for the garden, but then it went back to blazing heat. So I thought, why not let that inspire my dinner tonight and make it half warm, half cold, and we'll do kind of like a hybrid salad. So this is one of my new favorite recipes to make. It reminds me of my kale and quinoa salad, but it's different because we're using couscous, just whole grain, organic wheat couscous, and this isn't the pearl kind, this is the smaller kind. Super easy to cook. All I do is add some water or broth into my pan, get that boiling, and once it boils, I will pour in that couscous, remove it from the heat, put a lid on it, and leave it for about 5 minutes to puff up. Then I'll fluff it. In the meantime, I'm rinsing a can of chickpeas and grabbing some different veggies. And for this salad, I like to add in some heirloom diced tomato, some beautiful red bell pepper, and then I also am doing a raw zucchini, which is so fun. I feel like we don't eat things like zucchini raw very often, but it is so good if you just put it in a simple dressing. So I'm going to be using that today and just chopping this all up and adding this into the couscous. And I'll let the couscous cool down for a while before I add the veggies, just so it doesn't cook those veggies. To make sure the salad is going to be nice and bright, I'm using a combination of lemon juice. I have some scallions again, and then I love adding in some parsley. It almost reminds me of a tabbouleh, but all of that nice fresh brightness is so good in the couscous, and especially with all the vegetables, it gives it so much flavor. So we want to make sure this has a really delicious dressing. So I'm starting by squeezing about 3 tablespoons or so of fresh lemon juice into my bowl. You could do more or less to taste. And then I'm also going to do about half a teaspoon or so of cumin just to give it a little bit of depth. It goes really well with chickpeas too. And then I'm going to sweeten it up with 2 to 3 teaspoons of raw honey just to make it nice and sweet. And it kind of helps bring out the natural sweetness in all of the veggies. I'll do salt and pepper to taste. And then one of my ways to make dressings really just pop and have lots of flavor is by adding in some raw garlic. Not only is it super healthy for you to have raw garlic, but it just adds so much flavor in such an easy way. So sometimes I'll crush it with a crusher or mince it up really finely, or add a little bit of coarse sea salt to it and mash it into a paste. But honestly, if I get a little bite of garlic, it doesn't bother me one bit. So I'm going to add that into the dressing, and it will kind of start to soften anyway, and then I will drizzle in about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. I like to get the dressing going in the mixing bowl first. That way, as I prep each ingredient, I can just throw it straight into the dressing and get it marinating so it really starts to absorb all of those flavors. And then at the end is when I'll add the couscous so it doesn't get overdressed and kind of soggy. You want it to retain its nice texture. So for the zucchini, I'm just making little spears out of it, and then I'll go through and dice that up. And my goal here is just to make all the veggies roughly the same size. Anytime I'm trying to get back into routine, I love having the structure of having something homemade and delicious for breakfast, and then some sort of salad or something really easy just to do, like a sandwich at lunchtime, and then having something fresh and simple for dinner, like this salad, or having something on a sheet pan or in a slow cooker, just something that's not going to take too much time at dinner time, because I find that's the part of the day where we tend to be the busiest right before we eat. And so if I can have something that's simple to put together, then that usually is really helpful whenever we're getting back into the swing of things. So I've added in all of those veggies. I'll top it off with the herbs, and then my couscous has cooked and cooled, and you can see that it's nice and fluffy. So I'm just gonna add that in. And if you don't like couscous, you could also swap it out for another grain. So you could do bulgur or quinoa, whatever you want. Even brown rice would be really good in here, and it is just such a healthy version of grains and veggies together, all in one delicious married salad. So taste it, check it for seasonings. You can always add a little salt and pepper. But it was so easy to put together, and it's gonna go so well with the rest of dinner tonight. Just simple. And I think sometimes I forget that dinner can be simple. Sometimes you don't even need a fancy meat. Sometimes just using up the produce on your counter and the grains in your pantry is enough, and just pairing that with other things. So tonight I think I'm going to make a tomato salad to go with this couscous salad, and then just do some homemade bread on the side. So we're getting plenty of filling grains, and we're having some homemade bread and lots of veggies. So for our tomato salad to go with dinner tonight, I'm using some fermented Kalamata olives, and then I'm going to use some of these beautiful tomatoes, and they're actually from my farmer's market. These did not come from my garden, but they are so beautiful. They're called Carolina Gold tomatoes, and they're so sweet, but I love that they're just a fun, different color. It just makes it a little bit more exciting when you've been eating a lot of the same produce. So I'm just going to take that and slice them up into kind of big chunks and get these on a platter. We're basically going to marinate them in a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to do some really thinly sliced onion, and then top it with those olives and maybe a sprinkling of herbs. Almost just like a really rustic Greek salad. So for dinner, it's just going to be super simple. I'm also needing to pick up my groceries for the week, so just being able to use up what I already have is such a great thing to do. So I've got my tomato salad, and then I've got our couscous with all the veggies in it, and I'm going to pair that with some of my fluffy white bread. This is just regular white bread, it's kamut, and I'm going to put this on the side of dinner with a little bit of strawberry jelly that we've been loving from the farm where I get my meat. They actually have jelly too, and I just picked it up on a whim with my meat order, and it has been so delicious. So we're gonna have that. We'll probably have some tea to go with our fruit and dessert, and that is dinner tonight. Super simple, but I hope it gives you a little bit of inspiration this week if you're just looking to get back into the swing of things, back into a routine in your kitchen. You don't have to make it overly complicated. It can truly just be the real simple whole foods, and spend a little time in your kitchen for your loved ones. It's always appreciated. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.